The Dolphins have plenty of skills, but oftentimes what happens is when it's time to get nasty, when it's time to get mean, when it's time to get rough and tough, the Dolphins have failed to answer the bell, literally and figuratively, in recent years. And that's something that Sims and I have been harping on. The Dolphins need to get tougher. Well, Tyreek Hill is encouraged by the fact that there are practice fights happening for the Miami Dolphins, that it is a sign that the Dolphins are kind of behaving like other teams that Hill has been on. He's been on a championship team with the Kansas City Chiefs. You have to know how to turn it on and turn it off. It can't happen in the locker room. You kind of let it go on the practice field, but you show that you've got a little edge. You got a little spunk. You got a little something above and beyond X's and O's and running your routes and going back to the huddle and not being emotional, not letting your emotion and not letting toughness take over. And at the end of the day, no matter how safe football has gotten or will continue to get as they push for 18 and then 19 and then 20 games, it's still a physical, violent sport. You are imposing your will on another human being, or maybe two, depending upon whether or not you're double teamed. So there has to be that fight. There has to be that edge. There has to be that something more than the play designs on paper and running and catching and throwing and basic blocking and tackling. There's got to be a street fight element if you want to be successful when the season progresses to single elimination. The Dolphins haven't been. Mike McDaniel, coach of the team, making a big deal about the number 24 because it's been 24 years since they've won a playoff game. Now, I think that is a very deft way of taking some of the heat off of McDaniel and his Dolphins being 0 for 2 when it comes to winning playoff games. Spread it out, push it back, blame the organization, not the recent past, but look what's happened to them in recent years. Bill Belichick's easy for him to say, Bill Belichick says football season starts at Thanksgiving. And what have we seen from the Dolphins post-Thanksgiving the past couple of years? They have, especially in December, they have slipped, they have slid, and they have exited the playoffs with road losses each time. And they would have avoided the deep freeze, the open air meat locker in Kansas City if they had just closed the deal and won the division. So fading down the stretch of the regular season puts you in a tougher spot for the postseason, and one and done. And that's going to be the focal point. And the more that you keep coming back to the playoffs and losing, the more pressure there is each successive time. I remember the Bengals and Marvin Lewis going through this 10 years or so ago. They'd get back to the playoffs and then they'd lose. Then they'd get back and they'd lose. And the narrative kept getting louder and louder. When are you going to win in the postseason? That's going to be haunting the Dolphins this year. And there are rhythms to the calendar. And we get caught up in regular season mode, and we will be for an extended stretch. And then when you go to the playoffs, the whole vibe changes. And what you did during the regular season doesn't mean squat. What happens is we're right back in playoff mode, and we forget how playoff mode feels until we're back into playoff mode. It's the same feeling. You know, it's like the days of the week have a feel. Playoff time has a feel. And one of the realities of playoff time is we forget about the regular season. All that stuff that happened, that entertained us from week 1 through week 18 is over. It's done. It's gone. It just determines where and when you're playing in the playoffs. But then it's, hey, new season. Win or go home. For the past 2 years, the Dolphins have gone home. And it's encouraging. If you're a Dolphins fan, it's encouraging to see some physicality, some fight, something that could make things different. Not just when they get to the playoffs, but on the path to the postseason that determines the when, the where, most specifically for them, the where, because they need those games at home. They don't need to be going to Buffalo. They don't need to be going to Kansas City. They don't need to be going to Cincinnati. They don't need to be going to Pittsburgh. They need to get the best teams in the conference coming to them. They don't need to be going to Cleveland. Don't want to piss off the Browns fans out there who think they may be sitting on something pretty good this year, because they might be if they get good quarterback play. Regardless, Dolphins need to be ready especially if they do end up having to go on the road in the postseason. They need to be ready to go and put up a fight. And they need to be ready to be a little rough and tumble, a little mean, be the bullies. Don't get bullied. That's the way you advance in the postseason. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.